Discussion. We have the full complement of boards and commissioners. We did have our 2 executive sessions following our board meeting this morning and have taken a couple of different breaks in between all of these segments. So we're picking back up on our afternoon agenda with the first item being appointment to the Fair Board.
Hey, good afternoon. Happy New Year, Chair Harrington and board members. Nice to see you all. My name is Leah Perkins-Hagley, and I am the venue manager of Westside Commons, and I also serve as the fair manager to the Washington County Fair Board. Today, I'm bringing you 3 candidates for the Fair Board. We have 2 open positions on the Fair Board currently, and 2 incumbents, Bob Rollinger and Mitch Nussbaumer, are both interested in returning to the Fair Board. And then we have 1 new candidate, Jason Herrinks, who has also applied for the Fair Board. And after discussion with Fair Board leadership and our staff, it is the staff and leadership recommendation from the Fair Board to ask for reappointment for Bob Rollinger and to appoint Jason Herrinks. A little bit about Jason Herrinks, since he would be new to the board. Jason and his family are longtime supporters of the Washington County Fair as volunteers, and also have a very long history of serving as volunteers and members of Washington County 4-H. So a good fit for the Fair Board. Happy to answer any questions.
Just a quick question on Troy Sabellis's. His term started 2023, maybe? What I have is he was first appointed on June 1st.
Oh, yes, that is a typo. 2023, correct. I will get that updated. Sorry about that.
Nope, it's okay. Okay, all makes sense to me. Board members, do you have any questions? This will come to us for action on the 28th. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm also a commissioner on the Fair Board, and I agree with this recommendation.
Wonderful. I'll see you all back in a few weeks.
Great.
Great day. I'm glad I took very little time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to the next topic, the Supportive Housing Services Budget Discussion. Come on up, staff. Hey.
Good afternoon, Chair Harrington and commissioners. For the record, my name is Molly Rogers, and I'm the Director of Housing Services. I use she, her pronouns. I just wanted to make a quick note that I was very touched by many of the words that you all used this morning, particularly with our newly elected and our re-elected commissioners here, that you have really seen and been a part of this journey alongside of us. For the first time in many weeks, we are not going to talk about the SHS reform package this afternoon, but instead, frankly, something even more sobering than what that could entail. So we've just entered our 4th year of program implementation of the Supportive Housing Services measure. We did learn that the revenue to fund the program was lower than previously forecasted. And sustaining the system would require some right sizing and shifting away from our, say, COVID emergency response approach that we've taken. So now, with the December forecast from Metro, we understand the urgency of transitioning our system of care to what we call an essential system that prioritizes our commitment to voters, focuses on program outcomes, and sustained impacts to Washington County. The new revenue forecast presents real challenges, also some opportunities for us to refine our homeless system of care. It will be I don't want to sugarcoat this, it will be a challenging year ahead. We need to more than just tighten our belts, but we need to necessarily reduce some of our program capacity. I want to be clear that this transition will take some time and likely will happen over the course of a few years to incrementally ramp down some programs. Our staff have already been hard at work with our program partners to analyze performance, look at cost saving opportunities, level set our priorities, and ultimately prepare a draft budget recommendation that, but yet continues to be game changing for the people in Washington County. We also look to this board for continued direction and support as our homeless services division transitions to this essential system of care. And with that, I will turn over the presentation to Assistant Director Larson for an overview of the financial content and some considerations for your board's discussion today.
Thank you, Director Rogers. Good afternoon. Jess Larson for the record. Happy New Year. Pleasure to be here with you all. Welcome aboard. The presentation is quite brief and hopefully just a helpful outline of a memo that was sent to y'all in December after we had some time to absorb the information in Metro's forecast and sort of consider where we're at now and how we move forward with this new information. So in good keeping of presentation format, as you recall, as Molly has outlined, we did see this coming to some degree with the revenue collections in last fiscal year being below the actual forecast by about $6 million. And so we did prepare for some kind of new reality of the measure is not out, the revenue from the measure is no longer outpacing our capacity to use the resources. The resources are being spent and we now need to level set. And in that October conversation with you all, through your direction, we moved forward with delaying some of those new programs that we had planned for year 4 that might not be able to be afforded in this new reality. We also began delaying some non-essential positions on our team, communicating out these anticipated constraints with our partners, planning for some future ramp down of those temporary programs Molly described, and getting ready for a more modest budget for this fiscal year. So that's where we were at in October and really anticipating we needed more information to see where expenditures were at in the first quarter and what Metro's forecast would be. So now here we are with Metro's updated 5-year forecast. They do this every fall, sometime between November and December. And it's important to remember this is a new measure with new revenue tools, new taxes. And so we are still learning information each year as these taxes are collected. Director Rogers and I attended this forecast briefing with the economists at Metro, and in some, their sense is perhaps the data from previous fiscal years was misunderstood as a larger tax base, but in hindsight, though that increase in revenue from 2021 was really a reflection of changes in the economy because of COVID and because of the pandemic. And so now this new understanding of where the revenue collections are coming in is a sort of a new tax base reality for us going forward. They've always said, the forecaster or the economists at Metro have always communicated that this is a forecast, these are not actuals, and they've always shared this is a plus or minus $50 million scenario because they're still learning what the taxes, the nature of these two revenue meconnisms. And so because this updated forecast is indeed less $51.4 million for this current fiscal year is now what they're forecasting. For us in Washington County, we really do see this as kind of a worst case scenario. This is a lot to absorb for this fiscal year, and it resets what we're projecting and planning for in next fiscal year very significantly, and then going forward.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Just, and again, Jason probably already knows this, but so we've got up there under 25, 98.7 is now what the adjusted amount of our allocation, right? What did we budget?
115 million.
That's what I thought. So 115 million, it's now 98 million. So I don't know where your 6 million in the front part came from, but So we've got to adjust our program from 115 down to 98.
Correct.
And you said that's going to take a matter of time to do that. Okay, I get that. Then those revenues go up. So I'm assuming that this is status quo. This is nothing, that there's no impact on what Metro is proposing right now, the tax rate reduction and all that. This is just as the program currently is and was.
That's a excellent points of order for this conversation. This is based on, with nothing else changed in the way the current ballot measure and the tax revenue is coming in. They've been telling us it's a volatile tax. This is the first year we've seen a huge reduction. But this is a forecast, and this is what they're projecting based on their current read of interpretations of the data that they have from tax collections to date.
Okay, so
It's a
one more
5-year.
quick question pertaining to this, and then I'll let you move on. I'm sorry. Clackamas County stated in their meeting at Metro a month or so ago that they were budgeting based, it was more of a look back budget rather than what Metro wanted us to do as using the projected dollars. So are we rethinking about that and saying, okay, we're going to budget in 26, we'll budget 98 if that's what we actually get? Are we going to budget what they're proposing in the projection?
So we recognize that we were budgeting to forecast for 2 years, and that worked generally because when collections exceeded forecast.
And followed Metro direction as documented in their documents.
Correct, yeah, and I was just
So,
wondering about
Yep,
this. So,
and then we will, the 6 million you alluded to earlier is what we were seeing was a trend line of beginning towards around the fiscal year. Last fiscal year ended with 6 million less than forecast. So that was the first time we got the early indication that collections were trending downward and was not matching forecast. This does mean we will reset our base that is like this year we're going to get down to 98. We do have we're going to talk a little bit about this around some transition reserves to kind of help smooth out some of these edges. But we will rethink some of our reserve strategies. And we will be on the lower end will be how we budget. So we can smooth out at least what we have control over, so we don't have to deal with this level of reductions again, ideally. But
yeah, I'd rather we finish the year with a little change in our pocket rather than a big red number. So, yeah,
So we got criticized before
yes, we did.
for having change in our pocket. But what I heard was a little unclear. And here's why. We have already approved a year 4 budget. The team is implementing a year 4 budget. So what this conversation is about is not this current year 4 FY 24-25, but rather the strategy for FY 26, or doing an adjustment below our current. That's the point I'm trying to make. We already approved a budget and a work plan, and Metro moved forward with it as well at the 100 and I can't remember what number.
115 was our budgeted number.
There you go. And we know we have to reduce that down.
Yeah.
But you're asking the question, do we reduce down in this current fiscal year, or do we wait until the next fiscal year?
So we're going to try and
Change.
smooth it out a little bit. Is what we're
Right.
gonna do. Yeah.
Right.
All right. I get it. Thanks. Sorry, Jess. Go ahead.
No problem. Great questions, great discussion. So the forecast. A quick update on where we are at to date. So far, our partners have indeed been preparing to ramp down programs. We have 2 temporary programs that were continued because we had additional resources, were continued from the pandemic era of standing up kind of temporary style responses. One being eviction prevention, really significantly scaled up those resources, and we were able to continue that pace of resources. We're no longer able to continue that pace of resources with SHS. And similarly, we have 65 of our 400 plus shelter beds are currently being operated in two or more motels that are renting by the night off in the community. And so those are quite expensive approach to shelter programming. And now as we've brought on more permanent shelter capacity, and as we're facing the end of these additional resources, we need to ramp down those programs. And that has begun.
I just have a question about that first bullet, and that is, for example, community action and the work that they're doing, correct? Eviction prevention.
That's right. We have two partners providing eviction prevention programming with SHS resources. It's important to note these are not all of the eviction prevention resources in Washington County, though there are additional resources from the state and coming online from Medicaid. But with SHS, those two partners are Central Cultural and Community Action. And then the motel voucher program is operated by Project Homeless Connect and Community Action.
I think it helps me just to make those connection points. So thank you.
You're welcome.
But what you're proposing, you say they're starting to ramp down, but what this bullet says is for year 5, which is FY26. Because it says next fiscal year. Still on your first bullet.
Thank you.
So you're saying that when they say next
Oh,
fiscal
yeah.
year,
This
we're
says
talking
you'll
the
do the
25,
ramp down
26.
next
Is it
fiscal
happening
year.
now or is it happening next?
Thank you for that. That is an error. It is the ramping down is about to begin. It has been in the works, and what will begin, the first step is that no new referrals will be sent to that program, the shelters, and the partners will have time to use their existing staff capacity to help all of the participants move out of shelter and ideally into housing, and if necessary, at the end of the ramp down period, into other shelter capacity so that no household is turned back outside. Sorry for the error. Thank you for that correction. That is underway because we knew we would not have enough resource next fiscal year, and so we needed to ramp it down. We're speeding that ramp down process up a little bit, but still within reason to meet the needs of our community that will be impacted by that program. Next, our Q1, our early financial data from that program shows that we are on track with expenditures. Our partners are utilizing the resources, which is good. And also it is important for us to take in, because if we're at that pace of 15%, it's not 25%, but in the way expenditures work in the course of the year, they increase, the percentage increases each quarter. So this means we're on track to spend that $150 million approved budget, and we need to look for additional measures to reduce expenditures this year. We've had significant conversations with our executive directors of our 25 organizations working in partnership with the department to provide these services, and the Solutions Advisory Council, the advisory body that supports our homeless services work, about these anticipated reductions. And they're also supporting us in thinking through how we make decisions for program right sizing as we prepare the next year's budget. And then the other update to bring to you is, since our October conversation, is that we've moved forward on some of the important capital investments we've been working towards since the beginning of the program. So we are at a state now where the vast majority of our carry forward balance at the beginning of this fiscal year, it was $96 million, has been has been committed through board action to projects, and there'll be more on that in a future slide. So with all of that information, the new forecast from Metro, this first quarter update of where things are at, it's clear that we need to move forward in taking additional measures, both in this year's programmatic approach, and also as we prepare for next year's budget, which will necessarily reduce our system capacity, and as Molly described, bring us closer towards this essential system that we will be operating in future years to come. So our recommendations for your further discussion here are as described, accelerating that program ramp down for some of these temporary programs to reduce that to reduce overspending this year. And beginning to plan for that next year fiscal year budget with capacity reductions in some programs. One of the programs that's been clearly emerged as a likely candidate for reductions is our rapid rehousing program. This is an important program in our system, and it's important to say that none of these reductions are easy to make. But with rapid rehousing, we are primarily serving population B households. And as you may recall from our annual report, our system is serving more population B than is intended through the SHS measure. As a long-term goal. We always knew that would be the case in the beginning because it takes more time to create permanent supportive housing placements for folks who've been chronically homeless. But as our system is reaching the capacity of our resources and housing more of those population A households, we need to sustain those commitments, which means we need to reduce the other commitments that are reaching those population B households. And rapid rehousing seems like a program poised to do that. Of course, ramping down that program would take time. We would not remove anyone from the housing program who's currently enrolled. We would work with our providers so they have a time for a ramp down period for that program as well. Other conversations that are emerging are our housing careers program, a really successful and proud program that we facilitate in partnership with work systems. And when we think about our essential system of care, there may be considerations that this is not a program that's resulting in housing stability. It's sort of supportive of housing stability, but not essential to it. And there are other ways that workforce and employment support programs are funded through other state funding sources. Similarly, our data quality program is an excellent program that helped build out capacity and expertise in our organizations as they started operating supportive housing services program. It's a very complicated HMIS database system that you have to learn how to enter all the data correctly and so the information can be captured. And so we funded data positions in each of our organizations. We probably can't sustain one FTE at every organization and need to take a more tailored approach as a percentage of the admin program or a percentage according to the amount of capacity each organization funds as a part of the SHS system. So these are...
Is that going to make it more difficult for us to provide the data to Metro that they are requiring around SHS?
Excellent question, Commissioner. Thank you. Data quality is an ongoing effort in training with and in partnership with our providers. I think there are ways that we can continue to support data quality improvements through creating a more efficient approach to the use of this data quality program. We will always be accountable to reporting clear and sound data to all of our funders, including Metro, and we need to find the right way to sustainably fund that.
Balancing it in a more sustainable, financially sustainable.
Yes, thank you. So these are some considerations that have emerged in early conversations. I want to be clear, those considerations don't equal 15% of our system. There are going to be additionally difficult decisions to figure out how we bring our capacity down by 15% based on this new forecast. And we won't be able to sustain a level of service that we are currently at. So we can't ask our partners to do more with less. We won't be asking ourselves to do more with less, but we will all be taking reductions and working to do so in a way that achieves efficiency and sustains the effectiveness of our overall system.
This reduction, like these things that you have up here, to total right now. I assume you've done some back of the napkin math on this?
I can do that right now. Depending on the range and the approaches for those three items, we could be seeing a reduction of about $7 to $9 million in those items.
Half-ish of gap.
Yeah. There, and not on the list up here, but also the department, of course, will be taking some reductions in our own programmatic operations. We're going to be reducing some FTE capacity through attrition in our proposed budget. So in other ways that we're going to be finding cost savings too. And ultimately, we suspect all of our providers will have to absorb some level of reduction because of the realities of this forecast.
Before you move on, Ms. Angie, I know I've asked for this previously, and I meant it then, but I mean it now too. We need everything about this SHS program when we refer to years or fiscal years, we need to say both fiscal year and program year.
Mhm.
Fiscal year 2025-26 is year 5. It needs to say both of those things in the slides, in the memos, everywhere with regard to SHS, because it's only been approved as a 10-year program. Our team's done a fantastic job in every single one of these early years. We're not even at the midpoint yet, right? We've only got 3 years under our belt, and we've been making adjustments here in year 4. So we just, with this program and the nature of this tax and the volatility, we have to be painfully clear and specific each and every time.
So Catherine, just to
Yeah.
ask for clarification, so 25-26 is program year 5?
Correct. We're in year 4.
I thought I was doing my math, 27.
Yeah, you're doing great.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Chair. Our apologies.
Feedback received.
Yes.
Could I ask one other question here in comparison? When we looked at that chart early on, we looked at, can you go back to that page just for a minute, that chart?
Yep.
Okay, so our partners are Clackamas, Multnomah, and Washington, and Metro is there at 15.6 million, right? And what were they previously? You know?
Oh, like what actual dollar amount
Yeah.
before in the earlier forecast?
It's always been
Just
5%.
percent.
11,
Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
percentage.
So I guess I'm also interested, we're looking at this in relationship to us. I recognize that.
Yeah.
But as we look to the future and what's going to happen with our SHS package as a whole, I'd like to know where Metro is cutting their
They're
program.
not. Their percentage always stays the same.
Well,
Percentage stays the same, but the total dollar amount
Yeah.
go down if collections go down.
Yeah, they're gonna have to reduce just like us, except their numbers are smaller than ours. And so
I understand. I just wonder if they are reducing.
they're
That's
still
my
taking their
question.
5%, I think.
We can
That's-
get back to you. Our understanding is that they hadn't fully ramped up and hired all the staff that they were intending to, and they had other plans of their admin resources that hadn't fully gotten to the amount that they were budgeting to.
Oh,
So
they had reserves and we couldn't.
they just had more unspent on admin.
Correct. I mean,
There you
why
go.
did the regional communications plan effort not start until year 3 plus?
So you all understand my thought here. It's just, I'm just thinking, I understand we're working on this right now, but it still informs what our next steps will be. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. And it's an important note that all 3 counties and Metro, but all 3 counties are facing this level of reduction
Right.
right now and how to incorporate into their programming on the ground today and plan for a very significantly adjusted budget next year.
Our reductions are bigger reductions than Metro experiences. That's
So moving forward, another set of recommendations we'd like to, in addition to right sizing our system down to this essential system that we can afford to sustain sustainably year over year, we anticipate the need for a transition fund to help us get there over the course of a couple of years, ideally, because we don't think we can achieve this level of reductions in one fiscal year. Maybe I will illustrate that with one quick example, that rapid rehousing program, where we think it makes sound programmatic sense to plan for some reductions, but there are households already in housing through that program who've been guaranteed up to 2 years of rent assistance, and we want to see their housing plan through and their household onto sustainability after that program ramps down. And in order to do that, we might plan for reducing that program down by 50%, but it will take us probably 2 to 3 years to get that reduction fully achieved in our system. So
What's that?
Oh.
You'll tell me where
So-
the money comes from.
exactly. Thank you, Commissioner.
We're doing that because this is a human-centric approach, right?
Thank you, Commissioner. So a transition fund will help us achieve that planful approach to right sizing and downsizing to our essential system. And we're proposing a combination of places of resources. And in the next slide, there's a table that will show this more clearly. We have some remaining carry forward resources. We would recommend keeping our assigned focus for a couple items. This is the second bullet. We still have a Beaverton Access Center that has not moved forward, and we're seeking a permanent pod shelter site. You may recall that 2 of our pod shelter programs are on properties where we committed to operate them no longer than 2 years, and a permanent location for the pod shelter program will stabilize that program and continue to provide important shelter options for our community. So those 2 items are still in our carryover one-time investment plan, and we recommend continuing to seek and achieve those programmatic goals. But there is approximately $7 million after that can be used to help fund this transition fund. Additionally, in the first 2 years of the regional program, the Tri-County Planning Body, Chair, thank you for your work there at that space. It did not kind of come to full fruition and hadn't had a plan for how to invest its resources. So Washington County has necessarily, according to our IGA, held back about $9.8 million. We're still spending every year the 5% we're required to, but there's 9.8 unallocated, unspent for any purpose. And we think there might be useful regional use in investing some of that resource for one-time support for all 3 counties to ramp down. 9.8 would be our portion, but the other counties also similarly have unspent set aside for what's called the RIF, the Regional Investment Fund. And then
Address the gap in the forecast.
Correct. The shortfall.
I just keep wanting to say that, so any other shortfall, it would be gone.
And then the last recommendation we would like for your consideration is that in previous conversations, we had recommended taking a much more conservative approach to Metro's forecasted forecast amount and not setting our budget to that full amount, because we learned last year that we didn't achieve that full amount. However, now that the forecast has been reduced so significantly, we're not sure that we could adjust beyond the new conservative amount, or the new budgeted amount, or the new forecasted amount. And so we're recommending that we continue with using the forecasted amount we move forward with using the forecasted amount for this year's budget, and anticipate needing that transition fund to adjust according to what the actuals might indeed be. So these are the questions and considerations we want for your discussion. I'm going to finish up real quickly before you start to weigh in and answer, so then you can have your full discussion. So here's that slide. It's a lot of detail here. It was also outlined in the memo. And I see there's an error in how it's being projected. Apologies for that. But you can see the $96 million balance when we started our fiscal year. Much of that was already committed to various one-time commitments, and more has been committed since we discussed this back in October. What we have remaining is $14 million roughly, and some of that we recommend still be set aside assigned to those 2 capital needs that we've identified, but the remaining amount would be well used in that transition fund. And then similar, you can see the required and recommended SHS reserves total $32 million. There's 9.8 for the Regional Investment Fund. We also have 17 million for the stabilization reserves, which Metro staff have indicated would be well used in this time of transition, as well as contingency reserves for any programmatic crises. So we have some resources to put towards this transition fund and help us make these adjustments. But we must be mindful that this is a highly volatile revenue source that we are building very important, critical public service based upon. And so we don't recommend fully utilizing all of these reserves because we don't yet know what's ahead for our economy in the next couple of years.
Can I ask for a point of clarification on this slide? Because in a prior meeting, on the remaining carryover funds, both of those bullets for that whole category, it's 14.6. But I had thought from a previous presentation that you're assigned for the full first bullet was somewhere around, I want to say one of the figures was like 7 million. So what is the new use portion of that 14?
Thank you, Chair. You're exactly right. We've set aside, we've communicated to all of our partners about a $5 million commitment for access centers. So that would be 5 million for the Beaverton Access Center. And we anticipate about 2 million for the purchase of land and the site preparation needed for a pod village. So that would be a total amount of 7 million for those two purposes, leaving 7.6 million.
Okay. And then the other point of clarification, because this is also brought out in your memo on page 4, you, in the third bullet, it says use Metro's updated budget forecast to set the base budget for year 5, 25-26 at 100.4 million. So what you've presented here is to use that figure and do this transition. But my point of clarification is, how do I understand? You've convinced me loud and clear that the essential system demands, requires 103, maybe 103.1 or point something million. And I'm having a little trouble getting my head around 100.4. So we're saying, oh yeah, it's okay. We're going to operate less than the essential system.
I think
they're sharpening their pencils is what at least that's what I'm seeing is much more refinement and getting into details.
No, they haven't told me yet that they're redefining the essential system.
Chair, I think we don't think we'll get to the essential system next fiscal year, and we think we'll need to use some of a transition fund. So we'll use the 100.4 million forecasted amount plus some transition fund because we won't be able to ramp down to $100 million budget next year. So it'll be a combination of transition fund plus the forecasted amount, and then in a couple of years, the revenue will tick up to that 103 or just north of that. So we will be able to operate that.
So by year 6, then having.
We will obviously won't spend resources that we don't have. So we will have to adjust accordingly, but we have laid out an essential system in $25-26 that assumes that recognizes that there are some projects that are underway but won't be fully operational until 26-27, maybe even 27-28. But we needed to put it in today's dollars.
Yes. Yeah.
So that we can plan for those because we know every year expenses go up.
Yep.
And that if we don't have the essential system, we will have to come back to you and have to make other reductions and where it comes out of.
So what I'll say it because I haven't heard it said yet. The essential system is the system that is needed to meet the community demand that we have today with the goals and objectives that the voters approved with the May 2020 measure. Okay, so that's Pop A. Pop B, ending chronic homelessness and no net increase of homelessness. So if after that essential system, or if we don't achieve the essential system, we will have less than what the voters said we need to meet.
That's correct. We would start having to have a different conversation with you all about goals that may or may not be able to be achieved.
Okay. And thank you. Those were my 2 points of clarification. But I realize there is a third important one that my colleagues have heard me mention before, and I just need to verify. It's been very important to me that the system that we maintain continues to support the camping ordinances that are in place all throughout Washington County. And you've done a phenomenal job, you and the very large full system team here in Washington County, to ensure that there are always those emergency beds so no one has to sleep outside or in their car every single night. And if we move forward with what you've recommended, are we still able to stick to that approach?
Yes,
We're not eroding that.
yes,
Okay.
yes, we will
That's a
continue.
good way to put it. We're not eroding that. Thank you.
That is not what's on the table here.
Okay. Those are all just my points of clarification. Have at it, board.
I just wanted to acknowledge that it's really the cities and the work we're doing with them on the time, place, and manner policies. And yes, we're a partner with them, but yes, we're going to continue to be a partner with them on that.
Feel free to ask questions. No, it's okay.
So I just, there's a whole bunch of that. I'm not gonna ask all my questions because I'll come back around and ask them. Because I'm hearing, so I've met with Project Homeless Connect. I've met with all the neighborhood around the Yellow House. And I'm hearing that, lots of questions about access centers. So I know that we've committed $6 million to build the access center by the Yellow House. So I'm assuming that's in the $15 million that you've got there.
That's what
Access
was
center.
covered.
That one, the one in Tiger,
Okay,
Remaining carryover funds, right?
no.
no,
Under
no, no,
access
the
center
15
construction
million,
committee.
access center capital construction
it.
committed.
Okay, got it.
Mhm.
And Beaverton Access Center is in the 14.
Right,
That's right.
Right.
that's the final.
So I'm gonna stay a little bit focused on, because I also heard that what you said, the motel vouchers are a very expensive housing option. So we've got to move away from that. But in order to move away from that, we either displace people or we find someplace for them to go. And so where are we going to displace them to if we're not building more pod sites? And again, I've heard Hillsboro's got a gap in their pod site, and it's not a pod site, I guess, it's a shelter. And that's on pause. And so, and then I also heard that we're potentially closing 2 access centers. If Metro gets their way, okay? So I'm hearing a lot of rhetoric out there from a variety of different partners. So I'll just come back to the original one, the motel vouchers. How are we gonna, where are we gonna send these people?
So, excellent question. People don't stay permanently in any of our shelter beds. That's never our goal, right? It's permanent capacity we want to sustain so that we have sort of an open door emergency room approach to the work, but ultimately they're there temporarily until they can get housed. And in the case of the motel shelter program, it was intended to be a temporary expansion of shelter capacity while we've waited for the new Beaverton shelter to come online. And the Just Compassion shelter will be expanding from 20 beds to 60 beds later this spring. They will be opening their shelter.
The Tiger.
Tiger. And similarly, we've brought on 60, we have 60 pod shelters in operation now since the motel program. So we've added a bunch of capacity, and we kept that temporary shelter capacity in operation because we had the resources to do so, and we no longer do so. It makes sense to ramp it down. But we have added significant capacity, so there are still emergency shelter options for folks who are in those 60 beds, or anyone's coming into homelessness newly. But the goal is that ultimately, when we close the program, the individuals who are in those emergency shelter beds, stay in those motel rooms, are actually moving out to housing, which is always what we aim to do with everyone in our shelter beds.
And
we-
people out on the streets.
Yes.
We have more affordable housing bond housing under construction and opening this year through the next year or so as well.
Just to make a finer point on it, the folks that are right now residing in the motel vouchers have also been designated ARLA vouchers.
Oh, okay.
So they've been dedicated housing, permanent housing placement resources. If they can move in there. If not, we'll put them in our other,
Okay, yeah, good, because
just to make
as
sure they'll be taken care of.
Metro President Peterson refers to as draconian news. I just want to make sure this was, that we have an answer to that solution, that we have a solution to that. So, and then the second thing, which is kind of a hot button for me, is the eviction protection part of it. What kind of a hit is that program going to take? Because, you know, we've said all along, that's to stay off the next wave of homelessness, and now we're reducing that. Are we kind of opening that door up, back up again?
This is a challenging reduction. I think I caught a piece of gum on the table.
No,
Are you
you're
stuck to the
holding-
table?
Can't leave.
Pardon me. So the eviction prevention program has been essentially sustained at COVID era level fundings, which, as you know, ramped up significantly. We are working to make sure that we have some level of eviction prevention still funded in SHS going forward, though it will be it'll take us time to sort of right size that amount. There are other things here at play with eviction prevention. Oftentimes, eviction prevention is seen as an anti-poverty strategy, which receives funding from other resources. Our community action agency receives state funding for eviction prevention directly, and there's a proposal to increase those resources next year with the state legislative budget proposal. Additionally, Medicaid has come on the scenes and is focusing its first rollout towards eviction prevention resources. So what we'll be doing as a staff team is observing how eviction prevention's resources are available in the system as a whole, and where SHS resources are needed to target eviction prevention to work upstream, as you say, because that is critical, and within that 25% portionality of SHS resources, because that is the population focus.
But to Jerry's question, and I may be remembering something incorrectly, so help me here. When we were looking at potential cuts about 6 weeks ago, the eviction prevention, we were looking at significant cuts there, like up to 40–50%, I believe. So that's something to remember as well. So it is, and sitting on the board of community action, I hear that, I hear the issue there as well. So I just want to point out that
That's part of what a 25% tax rate reduction of your knowledge building is correct.
yes, I just want to make sure that we're,
It's the most cost-effective way to keep people coming into the homeless system at large. So, but we want to have some portion, but we need to look at it as a program. How many months are we going to support? How do we keep the number of households?
and I
prevented from being-
just want to make sure that I'm remembering everything correctly.
But it will be a big,
The other question that I have, and help me understand here, I'm missing a link. When we visited, I believe it was Catherine, Jerry, and myself. I don't think you were there. It was the Tigard location that's right at where
Family Promise of Tualatin Valley.
in the hotel, in the motel.
Yeah.
That is not considered, or is it considered one of the programs in that motel voucher
No,
program?
thank you for the question, Commissioner. Part of our approach in this essential care is sustaining the capital investments that we've all made together.
Yeah.
Through Washington County, our state partners, and that is an important capital investment. The three project turnkey sites, which include Tualatin Family Promise. I do the same thing. And our bridge shelter in Hillsborough and Casa Amparo operated by Central Cultural would all maintain their funding levels.
Okay, so that's different,
Mhm.
even though they were
Those are
formed.
owned facilities.
That's right.
Right.
The difference is we, the system, own those facilities as opposed to these current emergency shelter.
And they
hotels.
just happen to be former motels.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
that's-
they're leasing,
that's what-
yeah, they're leasing blocks of rooms as opposed to owning them.
Yeah,
And
okay, thank
taking
you.
advantage of Arla vouchers for.
Right, right.
Okay, folks, we need to end this topic by 3:30. So what other questions and comments do you have with regard to the proposal from our staff to make adjustments to the year 4 budget and in putting together a year 5 budget and working with the Homeless Solutions Advisory Council?
I think the approach that is recommended by staff is logical, well thought through. I'm satisfied with the answers you've provided to everybody. I think the approach makes sense.
Jess and Molly, I thank you for this presentation and the journey you have been. You're deep in trenches with this conversation, and you know how deep this cut is because you're dealing both ends, the internal staff and the impact it might have, as well as the community. So I appreciate that perspective and and balancing that perception there. The question I have, I don't really have a question, but I did have some minor question for my own edification. And I'm only asking because of something you said, Jess, making a direct eye contact with you because you made the comment because, or maybe it was you, Molly, I don't know. Now I'm questioning myself, but something about along the lines of this isn't when the conversation was starting for this presentation, there was a mention of separating this conversation and the reform conversation pending coming up.
Because we have another work session.
Yes,
happening.
yes,
Few
yes.
weeks, Yes.
But there was one other recommendation, especially in the other staff recommendation in the other category, make a request of the 9.8 million.
Yes.
Could you just, for my own edification and just so I know if I wanted to tell somebody this part, how would I explain it?
Absolutely. And this is fully separate from the measure discussion. This is under our current construct, under our current agreements and current advisory bodies and current work with the regional tri-county planning body, a consideration to ask
We go to the next slide.
to use, yes, the 9.8 million here in the bottom line of
Mhm.
that table to be repurposed to support the Washington County Transition Fund, and similarly use the same amount in each of the other 2 counties to support their transition funds, because all 3 counties are going through these significant reductions in real time and need additional resources. And those are funds that are unallocated at this time.
This time.
And to put a fine point on it, Metro gave each of the 3 counties direction to put together budgets at the prior year's forecast. And the counties have done that, which means we have transitions for multiple counties, which is why part of the staff recommendation is to request that an unassigned portion of that RIF be utilized to now make adjustments between the 2 different Metro forecasts, all for this current fiscal year.
When are you going to be making this request if it's moving forward?
We had early conversations with the, from staff at all 4 jurisdictions to see if they would be amenable to this. The notion is that perhaps all 4 jurisdictions would go together to the tri-county planning body with a a shared recommendation. My conversations with my peers indicate that what would be helpful is to sharpen our pencils a little bit more and be more precise about what it would take to support a transitional fund and demonstrate how we are using a combined set of reserves, not just the RIF, to achieve that. So staff will be working on
It
that.
would take a couple months to put that together. Probably.
No.
No, but the
Faster.
Tri-County
Have time.
Planning Body meeting is this Wednesday, so it's clearly not going to happen tomorrow. The next meeting is in February, so that would be the
That's what-
earliest
that's-
point to get approval from TCPB, which is the step that she's articulating. But more important to that is, how are you planning on bringing forward a year 4 budget update for this board to approve?
We are having to make we have to make some decisions in real time. And some of and we're asking our providers to make some voluntary decisions because we have existing contracts. So that is already happening. We have to make budget, and then with our quarterly updates.
For
From our
times, you need to come back to us with when we were going to be approving a modified, updated year 4 budget.
So the purpose of today's conversation was the strategy conversation. How modifications to the budget actually occur through the avenue of finance. It will not come through housing. It will come through as a budget supplemental. And so we will be
We
tying.
actually, per Metro, take action every year in approving the year 4 budget. So and we've approved a prior, I think it was year 3 update. So that was what my question was,
Okay.
not towards supplemental budgets and all that.
I
bigger
misunderstood
process.
your question,
Yeah.
Chair.
Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah. So you'll get back to us.
Yeah.
But fast is what I.
Yep.
No, I didn't say but fast.
Well,
No, I'm saying like the timing of this is.
They gotta figure it out. They'll figure it out. They are figuring a heck of a lot out. Yeah. Thank you. Any last questions or comments? You've been dealing with a lot. Thank you. You've always kept in mind that these are people's lives that we're impacting and trying to do it, as Commissioner Snyder mentioned, in the most human-centered approach possible. It's one reason why Metro Council in Peterson has had a difficult time with our estimates, our truthful estimates of what impact their potential cuts would mean. They're just that much further removed from the programs. Just so you know, Mayor Beatty and Mayor Buck, in their roles as chair and vice chair for the Metropolitan Mayors Consortium, were interviewed on Coin TV's Monday with the Mayor's Moment. It is available on YouTube. It is well worth listening to. It's very short, easy to watch or listen right on YouTube. And Metro is going full steam ahead. When is our next work session with regard to the referral? Next Tuesday? Or the one after?
scheduled for
I think
January
we actually
21st.
put time for the rolling agenda on both Tuesdays. This Friday, the new piece of information that you may have caught up with through your emails, but I want to bring forward in a public meeting is the Metro COO has reconvened the Metro Regional Housing Stakeholder Advisory Table for this Friday morning to give an update to that body. We also have received the latest round of the Metro polling, the memo from early December as well. So that pretty clearly lays out the information set that the council is using to put together a draft ordinance for this month for
I'd
their
love to hear your
consideration.
take on that polling results, because I read it and I thought, ooh, this is pretty good spin factor.
I'm happy to talk with you offline
Yeah.
prior to our next work session. Hang in there, hang in there. You're
Right.
doing great.
Everybody.
That
Good
goes
job, and
for our
by
community
June or July, we'll give you a week off from the work session. How's that? Gotta set standards and goals for you.
Thank
So
you.
we're having quite the informational journey today, as is a reflection of the varied Washington County portfolio. And today, our Danielle Farr, who may be new to you, Commissioner Snyder, is the Deflection Senior Program Coordinator who joined our team in the second half of last year to put this brand new program together that launched September 1st. The team has been not only delivering on the ground results across all of Washington County, but has been collecting data all along the way because the state legislature is going to be interested in data during their upcoming long session. So welcome. We've been on the journey with you. Please bring us up to date.
Thank you, Chair Harrington. For the record, I'm Marnie Kyle, one of the ACAs. You might notice that Aaron and I often take turns up here. The privilege of sitting with Danielle, because we really want to demonstrate that this program really is a collaboration between both the public health, behavioral health, and public safety sectors, worlds, and within our own organization, those departments. Erin was actually going to kick us off today, but she had to leave at 3:20, so I'm stepping in to be up here to support Danielle. And thank you, Chair Harrington. You did a great introduction. Took some of my thunder here.
Sorry.
No, it just shows how invested you and the board are in this program. And so I really do appreciate that. And we just wanted to acknowledge that back when this was just a conversation at the legislature, this board and our team really leaned into it and started planning and convening the required partners. In April, as soon as we knew that the funding was coming down the pike, we were able to hire a temporary program manager. And then once we got the funding and a plan in place, we were lucky enough to attract Danielle, and she's been doing a really fabulous job for us. So,
Clicker.
where's the clicker? So today I'm going to turn it over to Danielle, and she's just going to give us a refresher for not so much for you all because you're experts these days, but for the audience, just to remember what deflection is, a review of the engagement that we've done with partners and some program numbers, some updates, highlight some successes because we've been doing this long enough that we do have some successes to highlight. Take a quick look at our budget, a quick review of where we've been, where we're going, and just to give you an update. I also want to acknowledge and thank Will Stabler from the DA's office for joining us today. And we will quickly invite him to the table if there's questions that we need his assistance on. So
Yep,
with
'cause
that, yeah.
Our Washington County employees over at the district attorney's office are part of the solution set to make this work. And we know that. So thank you for joining us.
With that, I'll turn it over to you, Danielle.
Thank you, Marnie. Good afternoon, Chair Harrington and Board of Commissioners. It's always a pleasure to be here. I know it's been a longer than intended day so far, so I really appreciate the dedication, the focus, and the kind words, even on a long day. That really does say a lot about your commitment to this. So I
When she
appreciate
first heard about the long day, she said, maybe I could go out and get them lunch.
But this-
No worries.
Sounds like it.
How about dinner?
Oh, we're ready for the data.
So just full disclosure too, I have to leave in 10 minutes. I do have some questions, but I'll come back around if I don't get them in.
Okay, I will get to my points quickly and succinctly. So I know that you have seen a lot of some of this before. This is some of the content about our eligibility. But as I review, I want to again present some of these core details about our Washington County Deflection Program. Our eligibility, our access points, those are unique to us in some ways, and they were all thoughtfully considered. And that success criteria. One of the things I want to point folks to is as of the first of this year, we expanded our eligibility criteria to include not only the PCSU, which was one of the preliminary eligibility criteria, but also expand to the PCSA. That's more will in the DA's language.
Later on,
but-
if you could answer for me the difference between a U and A, that would be great.
But what that basically focuses is on the amount of substances in possession. So it is a quantity measurement that we elected to expand to include that larger quantity. It's still a misdemeanor charge, so there's not a lot of difference in that way, but it includes more individuals. So these are
Alignment between the transit, semi-deflection, is it a deflection that went into place, the law in 2025?
expand on that question
So-
a little more.
Transit, I see Will is coming,
Coming
but
up, well,
I'm just trying to wonder if there's any alignment between Washington County's deflection and then TriMet's law that got implemented. And I say TriMet, but I should actually say public transit, public transportation's use of drugs is banned now. So, yeah, well,
So I haven't seen any of those cases come in yet, and you're correct that they, I think they modified the statute of interfering with public transportation to now include use of controlled substances on a public transit vehicle, so bus or MAX. I think that's an area I think would welcome looking at to expand deflection. I think that would go part and parcel with the drug possession charges that we're currently deflecting. And I think we would just want to see what the numbers look like to see if that would have a meaningful impact. Just because if we start to see a decent number of these, I think it would be an area that would be ripe for expansion. That's just a brand new law, and I mean, it's only been in effect for a few days. To my knowledge, we
Safe
haven't
to
seen
say
it.
that you don't know how TriMet is currently utilizing that power.
Correct. Yep.
Thank you.
so looking at our program numbers so far, last time I think we saw you, I think the number was 3 or 7. We now have 31 active participants in our program. We continue to support the goal of offering a deflection from that criminal justice system. It's notable that approximately 80% of those who would be otherwise eligible are already involved in the criminal justice system. So these are individuals that are either, I think 63% have other cases already running concurrent. They're either waiting to be resolved or actively being resolved. There are also approximately 20% who have an active supervision case already. So they're already involved in our criminal justice system.
I want to ask about the 203, and this really goes to feedback I've actually given before I became a commissioner, just because I felt like it was super important. I would like to know how many of the 203 right now would have been eligible if the offense that they initially committed was done now. So, i.e., how many of the 203 are a controlled substance use issue from 3, 4, 5 years ago that was prosecuted through the criminal justice system, but wouldn't be now necessarily if they elected deflection? The reason I ask is this goes to the fundamental, to me, this goes to the fundamental issue of continuing an injustice that we know was disproportionately affecting certain groups of marginalized people. And by not allowing them to deflect into the program now, we're literally making that problem even worse or potentiating it. And you don't necessarily need
You're
to
asking
answer it
about
today.
the time period between Measure 110 initially passing and this reform to measure.
Or
110.
any time. I mean, my understanding is any contact in the past with the criminal justice system for, historically, like 5, 10, 7, whatever years ago, that makes someone ineligible for the program. Correct? If they went through the criminal justice system before?
Oh,
No,
I was gonna just say, I think it's a really important question and it's also a complex question because before this new measure passed with measure 110, it wasn't a criminal offense. And
Well,
so,
for a short period
think-
of time, and that's been for
Right,
years, but
right, but
we've had people experiencing these things for decades.
right, so that's what I'm saying is I think we would have to go back and look at what those charges were potentially 2 or 3 years ago, and I'm not saying we won't do it. I think it's an important question.
I'm gonna say
Um,
this differently. I don't think anyone should be excluded from deflection now who would have been eligible in the past, but simply isn't because they did a deflectable offense before. Does that
It-
make sense?
Yeah, yes, and then the other thing, I think it's a good time that there's also 2 other paths to have your record expunged. So this isn't the only path because they're already in the system. And the point of deflection is to keep them out of the system. But I'm getting a little bit,
Could we
beyond my
step back
depth,
here
but
For
yeah.
a second. The purpose of today's meeting is to give us an update for the program that was allowed for under the update to measure 110. The funding that we've been provided is less than what our opportunity covers, and we're trying to get an update so we're organized enough so that in this upcoming legislative session, we can ask for what we need simply for the terms of the law that became effective the second half of last year and into this current year. Doing research for way more opportunity is laudable, but I don't think we're going to be able to accomplish that before the session starts in a couple of weeks.
If I could just follow, Jason, can I jump on your bandwagon? I got 2 minutes, and I completely agree. That's where I was going when I'm out talking to other folks, both in the SHS environment and in the neighborhood environments. The question is, why isn't this program more broad, and why aren't more people eligible to do this? And I think that's a valid question. Now, we can, as to the chair's point, this is about money. It's not about the program itself, but I would like to be able to circle back and answer that question, because when we have 203 people not eligible out of 253, I mean, hallelujah, we got 31 active participants, but we got 200 people out there who didn't make the cut. And I think that's the point. And the other thing that I'm told is that, especially down here in the Yellow House environment, those folks get trespassing tickets on a daily basis. Then they're supposed to go to court. They don't go to court. So now there's a warrant out for their arrest. And guess what? The warrant doesn't allow them eligibility in the deflection program. So there's something in there that I think we need to be talking about with our legislators about a little bit of a fix. This program has got to work better for more people.
I appreciate the questions, and I was simply acknowledging that they are good questions. They're questions we hear in the community, but they're complex, so we just need to bring it back to you is
So for those
Valid point.
203, every bit of information that you have that will be shared with individual legislators or larger needs to be provided to this board.
Thank you.
Bottom line is we need more money. You're correct.
Well, I think that's true, but I also just because money is limited, I'm not comfortable with setting up systems that are gonna potentiate historically not good practices.
I think you
And
would find that we
That's
agree
what I'm
with you
concerned about.
wholeheartedly. We happen to be behind the 8th ball just to
financially.
satisfy the legislature that starts in 2 weeks.
Understood.
And
These concerns are, important to my heart as well as yours. I think it's important to note that we've been in operation 4 months. And one of the critical pieces and components of this is we don't want to start out as a giant, well-intentioned program. I'd rather be a smaller, functional, careful, equitable service providing program that is scalable and then meets all of our intended outcomes. So we are smaller. And again, Deflection is not the only house on the block as part of HB 4002. Anybody who is not specifically deflection eligible oftentimes has that opportunity to progress into conditional discharge. And that program still prioritizes treatment, supports, and alternatives. But since they're already criminal justice involved, it's just a different population and they're getting a different kind of support, a different kind of service. There is going to be more work that we can do to tease out how to get more people into the deflection program. And again, that's where we started with opening those doors to those PCSA charges. We are continuously looking for opportunities to open those doors in a way that can be defended, measured, and then presented as evidence-based as we move forward. So looking at our budget, it's important for this group to know that we have a plan to create a standalone fund for deflection modeled similarly after the general fund. So this will allow our fund to be monitored in behavioral health, since that's where the program technically lives. But then other divisions can still bill their costs to it, reducing some of those administrative burdens that we're currently experiencing. This is the first time that we've created a cross-functional fund for an individual program that multiple partners can code to. So this is new and different. You and your board will see this on the New Year's budget as a new fund. So look for that. You'll see deflection there.
You're saying it's funded out of multiple.
It is
What
funded
exactly?
via CJC, but it doesn't live in HHS. It doesn't, currently it's living in CAO's office. And we have to do a journal entry for each of these. This is
But it'll be its
administratively
own
very
next
heavy.
year.
Correct. So as part of the One Washington County vision, we're breaking down a lot of silos and creating a lot of new procedures and new ways of looking at things that allows for that flexibility and partnership. But that newness it's a little bit labor intensive at times. One of our biggest efforts lately has been staffing. So getting our new program up to fully staffed. We have myself, Will. We also have Joe Knopfsinger, who's a lieutenant at the Washington County Sheriff's Office. Those are our 3 FTEs that are currently paid for out of deflection. We have 3 more individuals that are pending being hired still. 2 of those are in the SME process and hopefully we'll be interviewing by next week.
Subject matter expert.
Correct. Thank you, Chair Harrington. And the other is the DA's senior legal specialist. They've been having some challenges finding a person who's qualified for this work. I think they're on the 2nd round of attempts hiring. It's posted as continuous right now in hopes that they can find some qualified individuals.
Is the current staffing all of those 1.0 FTE positions, or are they partial?
The lieutenant position is a 0.8 FTE,
The DA?
full-time. I think this might be one of the gems of our work. So since we spoke last, we have added 12 additional partnerships agreements with our agency providers. So that makes a total of 20. We continue to expand our network. I just finished a conversation right before stepping in here with another treatment provider who's wanting to provide services for one of our participants. In addition to those partnership agreements, we have 2 FTE worth of peer support contracts and 2 additional contracts that we've executed
with flexible funding with our peer agencies. And those are intended to provide cell phones, just those social determinant of health type of needs that are largely unmet and often are really time critical. So those are intended to help support our engagement with that population.
So these are added partnerships on top of what the Burns and so forth already had.
So our Burn Network is a partnership that we have available. These are, some are within the Burn, some are outside of the Burn, but there's some overlap there. These are the different services that are provided within our specific MOUs so that if our participant wants to go into a housing agency or get medications, they can speak directly with us and we can share that information with the team so that we can case manage, we can do some critical interventions, and we're not limited or burdened by some of the complications of trying to have one contact person do all of that. So all of this adds to our partnership network so that we can respond nimbly, quickly, and get those reports back from these agencies to provide that care quickly for our participants.
So I'm not sure if I'm understanding this slide right, because I thought when you started presenting this slide that you spoke to this program has added 12 additional peer-delivered services for partnerships.
This is our total. So of our 20 providers, 12 of them provide peer-delivered services.
Got it.
11 are substance
Got it.
use disorder outpatient
Thank you.
providers. Of the 20, these are
Yep.
the services provided.
Yeah.
They
Sorry
don't
about that confusion.
add up.
So 20 involved with this kind of breakdown of this.
Correct.
And some of them provide more than one service,
Yep.
so
Yep,
don't try to add it up.
yep,
Yes.
yep.
Got a
Thank
lot of-
you.
You got a lot of resources, a lot of partners now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's provided a great deal of opportunity for our participants. We feel that that participant choice in their provider, especially at this early stage of recovery, is one of the most beautiful things that we can offer. Hey, you've been confronted with this challenge in your world. We would love to offer you a recovery option. What do you feel that is going to be good for you and your proximity or work schedule or cultural needs or linguistic needs, whatever those are? They have something that they can pull from that we can partner with. So I think that's one of our strengths right now.
Tanya, I have a question.
Absolutely.
On this, easy question. The active MOUs that you have is 20. Is that correct?
That is correct, Commissioner Fye, yes.
Okay. And then what I heard you say is some are burn partners and then some are with the deflection program. Is that what the other is, or where are
Thank
they?
you. So some of those 20 are burn providers, some are not burn providers.
So they are funded from the deflection program.
These are not funded MOUs, these are just partnership agreements. So we're not paying anyone except for the 2 FTE peer contracts and the flexible funds contracts. Those 4 contracts are 2 agencies.
Okay.
Outside of that, these are just communication and partnership agreements for the sharing of reports and referrals and communications. That allows us to do our unique work with a partnership in the DA's office and the sheriff's office. As you can imagine, the privacy and security obligations there can become cumbersome. And with these MOUs, it helps to eliminate the barriers that are within that network.
Okay. And then Marnie, this question is to you. The burn partners are then funded by the Measure 110?
Right, and
Okay.
Danielle actually knows that question too, but
Oh.
yeah, burn partners can bill Medicaid and then they're also receiving some funds from Measure 110. So these are really agreements to work with us beyond the funding.
Yeah, okay. And then I think you're tracking this in the future, but if we were to quantify this value so that we can make the case of how much this program costs to actually do it correctly and correctly compensate partners and everyone involved, what would that look like? you don't have to answer to me, but it's just something to think about, quantifying, what would it take to do this successfully with all these partners?
When the part of the beauty of this is much of this is provided for with our burn partnerships and funded through that, or it's through OHP and funded through that. We even have some individuals who have their own private sector insurance, and we're partnered with some private agencies as well. So it's the sharing that is the most valuable to the function of the program right now. But with gaps in housing and other things widening, missing some of those already funded areas will become critical for deflection in the future.
Okay, thank you. And I apologize, I directed my question to Marnie. I knew you could have answered, but I wanted to separate the burn and the deflection.
No,
for you.
thank you.
And just as a reminder, since you brought up the burn and the burn funding, that our GR team is on top of it, but their funding is threatened as well, and they're looking at potential of pretty significant reductions, which you know it wouldn't be direct funding that we're receiving, but it would definitely have an impact on our ability to serve the clients that we're working with. So just since you brought it up, I wanted to remind you of that.
Thank you, Renee. Another one of our strengths in our program has been our community outreach within our presentations. So last we had spoken with 7 different agencies and outreach efforts since the last we spoke. We have added an additional 10, so a total of 17 outreach meetings or presentations just regarding the deflection program. So that strong factor has been great. That ensures our community is not kept in the dark. They know what we're doing, they know how we're doing it, they know who's being served and who's being helped. Washington County is beginning to be known as thoughtful and an available leader in the deflection community. And this is represented in our repeated invitation to speak and present at statewide events. We were one of 3 panelists chosen to speak at the Association of Oregon Counties event, and one of 3 counties testifying at the Joint Interim Committee on Addiction and Community Safety Response meeting on December 11th. Our program specifically has been described by OHSU, who's our technical assistance partner, as thoughtful, proactive, and prepared. And as we continue to reach out and promote trust and opportunity within our community, I think it's heartening to know that these descriptors precede us and help us to reinforce confidence and care. And I've touched on some of these as we've had our discussions because I think they are largely obvious, but our growth continues to provide some new challenges and opportunities. We're leaning into these as a team, but not without difficulty and intentionality. Our staffing has been delayed partly due to just standard growing pains of a new program. Again, we're 4 months in. That's a lot in deflection time, but it's not a lot in county time. We continue to find new processes and work in cheerful partnership in our One Washington County spirit. Each of these steps, I mentioned the funding and the new fund creative solution. Each of these steps requires a bit of creativity, and they can take time, but we're pleased to report that because of the culture of Washington County, we leave every meeting with a solution and a plan, and despite the challenges. In addition to more global concerns, one of the bigger challenges we have in our deflection program is failure to appear, or FTAs. This rate impacts us at every level in our program. We've been reaching out to technical assistance through OHSU to see what other counties have been doing to help support their programs, but more importantly, the individuals, so that we can make those contacts. This FTA rate means no contact with the individual, not just a the additional administrative burden within the system. What we have found is that this particular work is being, or this particular issue has been across multiple counties across the state, this failure to appear. So it's on everybody's radar, and we're looking for gentle, creative solutions. As we're also understanding our work patterns better and how our partners are responding, we are looking forward to additional feedback and support opportunities for our public safety partners as well. They're starting to get a feel for what this work looks like and how it's going to proceed. So we're ready to hear from them on what's working well and where we can offer some additional support.
Daniel, on the failure to appear, and you don't have to go back to the slide. You can stay here, but one of the slides, earlier slides, was about the numbers, the program numbers, and there was an eligible was 50. Failure to appear, is that contributing to that 50 number?
Yes, in
Not
fact,
the not eligible one.
we have a lot of FTAs present in the ineligibles as well. So the burden persists throughout. It's not specific to the deflection eligible individuals. However, of the approximately 50 that were eligible and 31 are participating, that difference of approximately 20 is almost 100% FTAs. We were never able to reach them. We were never able to contact them. And we have a relentless outreach team that is doing everything. We daily meet for our huddles to try and look at, is there any clue in the citation? Is there anything that we could do? Is there a place that they're going? Can we encounter them somehow, some way? How do we get them a phone? How do we connect? So in spite of that, we're still unable to get 100% of people to their court date or into deflection.
You guys are classifying that as failure to appear, but it sounds like which is sort of maybe a traditional court use of those words, but like this, it sounds like this is just like you can't even connect with them, you can't find them, they're lost to follow up, kind of in the healthcare research space. You just don't know don't know how to get them.
And as a result, they miss their court date.
Right, which is where it then becomes a failure to appear. Correct.
Yes, correct.
Any chance, you mentioned cell phone, but I think earlier you said cell phone dispensing as well. Any chance failure to appear got a cell phone, but they still failure to appear?
We haven't had that happen much. I would say anecdotally, and I would have to get you actual numbers, there have been some individuals who have entered the program, they're participating in the program, but they have some wavering of motivation, and maybe they had a cell phone that was provided to them. We lose contact. Our particular population struggles with more than just a substance use interaction with law enforcement, and that can lead to dysregulation, disorganization. Loss of a cell phone is fairly common. So we anticipate that, but we do continue to provide those resources in spite of those challenges because we know that's the best way to get a hold of folks. So we will continue to provide them even if they're lost. So despite these opportunities for growth, it's important to reflect on what we are accomplishing so far and how it's being experienced in our community. Up on the screen, you can see a quote from Tony Vesna, who's the executive director at Fourth Dimension Recovery Services. He's been a big champion for our efforts, not just in our county, but outside as well. And also Officer James Weed, who's been one of our biggest supporters from our public safety lens. I'm pausing because I'm recalling multiple conversations I've had with our participants who are just overwhelmed with how kind and compassionate their interaction with him was. And we get plenty of compliments on our peer teams. It is not every day you get loads of compliments about the officer that gave you the citation. So we've been really appreciative of having him available as part of the team. Some of the successes we've had thus far that's been heartening for me is we did encounter our first monolingual Spanish-speaking participant. We're proud to state that this was our first opportunity to test our program and see if our designs would support the needs in the ways that the program intended. And we were heartened to share that this individual experienced no delays, was met with a Spanish-speaking peer at intake, was given options for culturally and linguistically specific services, and found and fully engaged in his preferred services within a week of intake, and continues to find support and connection within this framework. And I think what this means to me is we've designed these things, we've thought about these things, but until we actually see it happen, there's always that question. So I was grateful to see that the thing that we hoped would happen absolutely did. And I think that's one of the best things that you can experience from a new program with a new population and a new design and a new team. Oh, and looking at this timeline, we're reminded that we're experiencing incredible growth as this program progresses rapidly. Despite our mandate to grow this opportunity for our community, we continue to be mindful that the inevitable growing pains of a new program are experienced by the team and not by the participants. I think we've been very careful about this, and we continue to expand our program in thoughtful ways. Thank you for your time and support of our program. I am excited about our work so far and happy to answer questions if you have them.
Board members, questions and comments. Now go left.
Good work.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Commissioner Treese.
I think I've made my comments earlier.
I've asked enough questions. I'm waiting to hear the answer to the chair's question around the difference between U and A.
Oh, sure.
So my comments, because of time, I'll be brief. I really appreciate all that the team has accomplished in short order, and you summed that up as well. There's a piece missing to me in the update, and with a one Washington County approach, I would have expected it. And that is our GR team needed to present some information here. We know from prior overviews that Washington County's granted monies is much smaller compared to other counties of our population size. There are 10 counties out of 36 who have a population of 100,000 or greater. And I know that some of our Washington County legislators do not remember what other counties in that top 10 have been provided. And also I would like to know how our monies provided through this initial grant, and you've got the 3 qualified data points of ineligible, eligible, and active. I'd like to know how that compares to the other, I'll say no more than 10 top populous counties. And it may be fewer, but also what their granted money level was compared to ours. And just the reminder of what are we trying to accomplish with this upcoming legislative cycle. Our government relations team should have participated and brought that holistic one Washington County view of this program to us without us having to dig through files and put that together. My main focus has been on the prior board gave you gave you full confidence in putting this new program together. And we're very proud of what you've been doing with it and all of the learnings. I don't want to have to learn of Washington County learnings through the media. So please send us appropriate email updates so that we have received that directly. But I know the legislature, especially Washington County legislators, are hungry to know what we need and how to build upon your successes. I'd also really appreciate having some sense of what are the next steps across a larger set of county collectives, because I know you've done a lot of work working across different associations, different work groups and whatnot. I would also like to have an appreciation for how they performed with regard to that not eligible, because it's really incumbent upon the state legislature to enable us to do further work. I know we are staff constrained to execute all of these valued services, and that's without doing the additional research, let alone the problem solving that we need to do for this upcoming proposed budget. So I'm trying to be very mindful as one of five in terms of my asks. I don't want to be impossible, but rather I think we are looking to continue to offer our unanimous support of making asks so that you have the tools as subject matter experts to meet the needs of our community as part of Washington County. So that's where I'm coming from.
I will say that on that point, like some of the members of the legislature that I've spoken with in the last few weeks, like this is the thing they're most curious about. Like for what they made decisions on last year was kind of tough for some of them to swallow. I mean, they've actually said that. They want to know how it's going. They feel like they made boo-boos before. Did we fix it? Is it better? Is it worse? Like, I think to the chair's point, there's a lot of interest in, did we do something good here, being the legislature? And perhaps that opens the opportunity to discussions around the funding.
Well, between our updates, previously you let us know there were about 11 or 17 active participants, and now
Yep.
you're up to 31
Yep.
in a small September, October, November, December.
Yep.
4 months.
We have results.
We are changing lives. Yay, team. Keep going.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Chair Harrington, I appreciate your support. Do you have a timeline for when you'd like some of these updates?
I see this timeline, and I know you're all involved in delivering the services each and every day and trying to work as a team to put the data together and do all of those things that you talked about on these opportunities. So no, I don't want to dictate any timelines. You've given us email updates before. We have lapped them up. Okay. So we'll leave that to all of you, but know you have our rapt attention.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, what I also saw staff taking note of is if we think there may be media stories, we never can always anticipate that, but we will also make sure to be giving the board a heads up and making sure that you have any relevant data regarding the Washington County story.
I know you've been really trying, and I'll speak for the board. I think we feel very well served. Boy, do we expect much more attention from other folks during this next session. So just keep us on that journey with you. I think we'll be happy campers.
I'm sorry, I do have one quick question. How many counties are engaged in the deflection program now? Is it still the
It's
same?
like in the 20s, 21.
Plus or minus one, I think 28 is the number that's coming to my mind,
Well,
but I
not
can give you
only-
that with 72.3% certainty.
Well, not only are we on the top side of those that are doing the program, we're also on the top side of the state. So I just want to mention that.
And along the I-5 corridor.
That was helpful feedback. Thank you.
Yeah.
Keep up the good work.
Great work. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have one more topic here, board and leadership communication. I myself am not going to talk anymore today because we have a roundtable on Thursday and you've got external communications, but we do need to make sure we get to leadership communication first. Let's do that first.
Well, good afternoon, Chair and Board of Commissioners, and officially welcome, Commissioner Snyder. So I will actually follow your cue, and I am brief too with the start of this new year. So look forward to the roundtable conversation with you this week. Departments are in budget time, so this is where working on the budget scenarios that of the 10, 13, 17% and having rich conversation about what that means to services. So I look forward to that continued conversation on Thursday with you.
Have we worn you out yet today?
Oh, my day's been easier than yours, Chair, I think. Again, Happy New Year. And I also wasn't going to give an update today, but it doesn't seem nearly as generous after 2 passes. So, but still, no update from legal today, but we will be with you on Thursday and next week and all the weeks moving forward with lots of interesting things.
Which you reminded me, I did reach out to Alex Barnett, our new hire for county council. He's continues to be very excited for the job and looks forward to starting early too.
Yeah, and since you raised it, I also have had one really productive 1-hour conversation, and we are actually scheduled to speak again next week. And I think we're going to have a series of conversations so that we can continue to get to know each other and start to let him know who we are and who he is, and the most important things to know as we look forward to bringing him in just over 5 months.
Great. Yeah, I've been in conversation with him as well, and also connected him with previous county council Tom Carr because he has to connect with him as well.
Perfect, great.
Thank you, Chair Harrington, and good afternoon, Board of Clean Water Services. Happy New Year and welcome to our newest director, Snyder, and he's been properly pinned, I think. I received a Clean Water Services. Just an announcement, the Clean Water Services Advisory Commission meeting is tomorrow. They'll be meeting over at the Durham Water Resource Recovery Facility Conference Room, and they'll be selecting their chair and vice chair for the commission and nominating 3 budget committee members from CY. So it'll be a busy day. Thank you.
Great. Board communication. Oh, this chair's driving me crazy.
But not your
Don't
fault.
know how to keep it from going back.
I'm going to follow your lead, Chair Harrington, and say nothing pertinent to report.
Well, I'm not going to. I do want to report a couple things that we had our ACRE meeting last night, and the focus was on bias crime, and it was a good presentation by the DA's office, by the DOJ, and also, by several members of the DA's office. So it was good. I also wanted just to let you know that yesterday I met with Catherine Charlo from Metro in my role as almost exited MPAC chair to talk with Mike Jordan, who's the new city manager at the city of Portland. He's been there for many years, about Portland's engagement on the committees that we sit on, or lack of engagement is really the issue there. So we did talk about that, and he also opened the door and said, if any of you want to meet city councilors or whatever, please take that back to your commission. So,
Well,
What did he say
you're
about
right.
engagement?
It's an expanded city council compared to the 5 that they had before.
Yeah.
So hopefully out of the total of 13,
Yeah.
they'll be able to get at least 1 regular member, if not.
and he was very positive about that. And as many of you know, he does hold a soft spot for Metro because he did spend, I believe it was 10 years there as well. So he's very interested in getting re-engaged but he also encouraged us to talk with Multnomah County about their engagement. So I just wanted to let you know that piece. Thought that's it.
I don't think we need to go solve their problems or anybody
He
else.
was just hoping that we might help.
I'll be brief, but just cover a couple points. I had my first commission meeting. Thank you, everybody, for being kind today. It has been a long day. I have been over the last week onboarding, getting my IT gear and equipment, getting things set up, participating in some staff interviews. The last couple of weeks and then into the following week, I've had not my prompting, but I've had a number of community organizations that are in, I would say, the general supportive housing services space, outreaching, wanting to give me tours, meeting, et cetera. I have been taking those as requested and just listening very carefully and doing my community work. But I want to make sure the commission in particular knows that that's been happening. I'm sure that's probably not a surprise to any of you. Last, I am enrolled in county college, and that starts next week. I'll be leaving here from the roundtable and trying to get to Corvallis in about an hour. So we'll see how that goes. I might leave a little early because of that, but that also means, and the reason I'm bringing it up is I don't think there's an effective way for me to be at Commissioner Rogers' celebration event. So
Thank you.
if you can provide my regrets, I just don't think it's not gonna be workable unless I had a helicopter.
We're hoping that that January 16th roundtable will be done no later than 2 o'clock.
Okay,
That helps you. What?
I'll
Wait,
prioritize.
wait. Yes, Kevin.
You just have it scheduled with the federal lobby until noon. you-
We have to adjust that.
Oh, okay.
So I may be late to county college day one.
Well, we're
That's
trying to
okay.
get you there earlier.
Yes. It's all right. I'll prioritize.
You're
being-
going, that's good.
I am.
Yeah.
going.
Um,
That's all I have. Thank you.
Something you said reminded me, yes, we have the external meetings email that does share not only with the board, but also with senior staff. All of the external meetings that each one of us is having.
I saw Grace
So-
email that out
Yeah,
earlier in the
so
week.
that
and
provides
mine was-
us with-
Mine was blank. And I know why. Well, I mean, they weren't on the calendar.
You have a copy?
I just got access. Some of them happened in
Slacker.
December, but
But I can also help you learn the file-free busy options so that everyone in the organization has visibility into your calendar, as they should for all county commissioners, since our calendars are public. So, all righty. We are done for today. This is why it's advisable 9 to 5 for big board day on Tuesdays. And I'm trying to be very judicious with your time on roundtable days. Thank you very much. With that, we are adjourned.